Outside air that has dropped far below freezing moves over sea ice and hard snow. In that cold, exposed metal can crack. Bare skin loses feeling in seconds. A person standing still in the open would not last long, yet very close to that same wind, families sit inside low white shelters and speak in normal voices. Children remove their mittens for a moment. Someone leans close to a small stone lamp. The fuel is animal fat. The walls are snow. There is no wood fire, no metal stove, no electric line in the ground. The question sits in the middle of that scene. How can a snow house and a thin flame hold enough heat for life when the air outside can fall toward the numbers? People write in record books for the coldest places on Earth. Most people think of home heat as something that comes from far away. A power plant, a gas line, a stack of cut wood. When the room cools, a heater turns on. For Inuit families in many parts of the Arctic, the system is much closer to the body. The house is snow that fell nearby. The fuel was swimming in the sea days or weeks before. The main tools are hands, knives, and memory. Winter pushes temperatures far below the freezing point of seawater. The dark lasts for many hours. Storms arrive fast. In that setting, there is no forest to feed a fire. Driftwood on some coasts is too rare to waste. The problem is clear and simple: how to turn what is available, snow ice, stone skin fat, fur breath, into a home that can hold a small pocket of safe air. The script of this system sits inside shapes, materials, and habits that have been tested through many generations. The Arctic winter is not only cold, it is moving. Wind crosses long distances without trees to slow it. It sweeps along open sea ice and hard plains of snow. It fills any gap in a bad wall. It digs at exposed skin and carries heat away. The light can be very low. During parts of the year, the sun does not rise above the horizon. The ground under the snow is frozen. In many hunting areas, there are no tall plants. The air can be dry, so moisture leaves the body faster with each breath. On the sea ice, any mistaken shelter has no backup. There is no second house nearby. The environment pushes in from every side. It pulls heat out of the ground, out of the body, out of any space that is not sealed. This pressure shapes every choice: where to build, how high, how thick, which direction the opening will face, how much fuel to burn, when to move, when to stay. For a family, the cold is not an idea. It is the feeling when a hand touches a stone and cannot sense its own weight. It is the sound of snow under boots hard enough to squeak. It is the tight line of breath that comes out in a pale cloud and hangs for a moment in still air. Daily life under these conditions is work against loss of heat. A hunter leaving the snow house must be sure that clothing is dry enough and layered in the right order. A child playing too long near an opening can let in a draft that chills the floor. Sleep is not deep if the lamp goes out or smokes too much. Every movement has a small cost in heat. People learn to move in ways that waste less. They sit together. They share a raised sleeping platform instead of spreading across a large floor. They eat food that carries a high amount of energy for its weight. The struggle is steady, not loud. It is present in many small decisions that most outside viewers do not see. The core of the heating system begins with the snow house itself. Builders cut blocks from wind-packed snow, not loose powder. The blocks are dense enough to hold shape, but still full of trapped air. They stack them in a curve that closes into a dome. Each block leans slightly inward. The joints are staggered. Gaps are filled with loose snow. The wall grows thicker than an arm's length. Air inside those walls does not move much. That still air is what slows heat loss. The entrance is cut as a low tunnel that sits below the main floor of the living space. Cold air sinks into that tunnel and stays there. Warmer air stays in the higher part of the dome where people sit and sleep. Inside, the floor is not flat. A sleeping bench is built higher than the center walkway. People sit and lie on that higher platform, often covered with skins. Heat from bodies and from the lamp rises into the dome, then cools and settles, but the shape keeps much of it cycling inside, rather than spilling out through gaps. The lamp carved from stone completes the system. Seal or whale fat is rendered into oil and placed in a shallow dish. A line of plant fiber, moss, or other wick material rests on the inner edge. When it is lit, the flame follows the line of the wick. It gives off steady light in a controlled amount of heat. One well-managed lamp can raise the air in a small snow house to near the melting point of ice, while outside air remains far below. The lamp also dries clothing hung at the right distance and warms food placed nearby. The person who tends the lamp controls the size of the flame by trimming and moving the wick with a small tool. Too small, and the house cools. Too large, and the lamp smokes and wastes fuel. Clothing adds another layer of design. Caribou fur with hollow hair traps air close to the skin. One parka worn with fur facing inward and another with fur facing outward builds two separate layers of still air. Boots combine waterproof outer skins with inner fur and sometimes dried plant material so that feet rest in a small dry pocket. The house, the lamp, and the clothing form one continuous insulation system from outside wall to inner skin. The result of this design appears most clearly on nights when the difference between inside and outside is at its largest. Outside, the wind carries grains of ice that sting any exposed surface. A pot of water left in the open freezes solid. A breath leaves the mouth and turns to frost on a scarf in a short time. Inside the snow house, water near the lamp stays liquid. Snow on the inner surface of the wall may slowly turn to a thin, hard crust as it absorbs moisture from the air and then freezes again. The temperature on the sleeping platform can sit just above freezing or a little higher. It is not warm in the sense of a modern heated room, but it is far above the level at which human tissue is damaged by cold. People inside can eat repair tools, care for children, and sleep without constant shaking. This method works better than many obvious alternatives in that region. A fire of driftwood or imported fuel would burn fast and fill a small space with smoke. A house made of thin, rigid material would let heat leak out through every seam and would rattle in the wind. The snow house does the opposite. It slows, air softens sound, and spreads heat from a small source through its entire volume. When combined with efficient clothing and high-energy food, the system turns a very small amount of fuel into many hours of survivable conditions. The central paradox, the idea of warmth inside a shell of frozen water, resolves into a clear physical plan. This plan did not appear in a single season. It comes from repeated contact with the same forces over long periods of time. People observed how different types of snow held together, how some blocks crumbled and others stayed strong, how certain shapes stood through storms while others failed. They learned that entrance tunnels placed in the wrong direction filled quickly with drift and made movement too slow. They learned to find snow that had been packed by wind to the right density for cutting and to avoid crusts that hid weak layers. The knowledge of how much fat to keep for lamps, how to render it cleanly, how to store it, and how to share it between families came from the same process. Inside the house, the person who maintained the lamp held detailed practical knowledge. She watched the color and length of the flame, listened to the sound when oil burned faster than it should, knew when the wick was about to smolder. She understood where to hang damp clothing so that it dried without scorching, and where to place food to warm without boiling. Children saw this every day and learned without formal lessons. The same was true for clothing. The order of layers, the choice of which fur to wear in wet conditions. The routine of drying boots and socks, the way to protect the face in moving air, were all tuned across years of trial and small corrections. From the outside, the system can look simple. From inside the culture, it is a dense network of decisions and adjustments that form a kind of practical science of heat. Night settles on sea ice that carries no trees and no sound of leaves. Wind pushes over long, flat white fields and around low, rounded shapes that rise from the surface. Inside one of those domes, a stone lamp burns with a short, steady line of flame. Faces turn in its light as hands pass foodmen's seams and hang a pair of damp mittens to dry. Breath lifts toward the top of the dome and fades into the snow. The entrance tunnel stays dark and still. On the raised sleeping platform, a child curls deeper into a layer of fur. The wall of snow does not move. Outside, the air keeps falling in temperature. Inside, the small pocket of air around those bodies remains enough. The way these homes hold heat in such cold rests on snow-fat fur and careful attention, not on distant machines. If you want to stay with stories where older knowledge meets hard climates, you can move from this one into the next and keep following how people learn to live inside the cold instead of escaping it.